Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Cookiecast. Today I sat down with Donna Davies and we had a conversation about, mostly music. Vinyl, to be precise. There was a little bit of chat about mental health, and we talked about some of the ways that we can make our lives better in the form of things like Tai Chi and yoga that can help with mental health. This is kind of like a special. It wasn't like a proper podcast that I'm going to break down into parts. It's a little bit longer, but I feel that this one needs to be one whole podcast. So we'll call it a podcast special because it's specifically around one or a couple of subjects. So have a listen, see what you think. And this is my sit down with Donna Davies. Right, podcast time, let's do this.
Okay.
That's my catchphrase.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I'm going to get t-shirts printed up. And I told Tom originally when he was like the only person that listened to the podcast, I was like, hey, I'm going to get you a t-shirt printed. So I've actually thought about what I'll have as like the t-shirt and merchandise stuff. So I'm going to have the logo on one side and then... it's podcast time, let's do this on the other side. I don't know which way round. Might have a little slogan on the back or something.
I don't know why. I don't know if Leanne's ever said I'm terrible for spoonerisms. Not because they're rude or anything. I just read things back to front. And to me, in my head, then that was just cod paste.
Oh, yeah. Cod paste. There you go.
And it's when I don't know, what would that be? I quite often read things the wrong way around.
I have that, but I think that's the dyslexia that comes out in my reading. I read things weird. I read something moments ago. I read something and then I had to go back and read it again to realise that the sentence didn't work and was like, oh, that's not that word at all. So that was why it didn't make any sense. Turning and tuning. I think that was the... somebody was turning into a conversation. I was like, why would you turn into a conversation? Oh no, they were tuning into a conversation. So Donna Davies, back, podcast 2.
Okay.
So we need to talk about the first podcast. There's been buzz, internet buzz, some might say.
Of
at least 3 people have said to me, I really enjoyed listening to Donna's podcast. It was great.
Anything in particular that sort of came out of it that people were interested in?
You had passed a message on to me and somebody else had mentioned about the hair farm.
Yeah, was it Dawn?
Dawn had said about the hair farm.
Yeah.
And Paul had said about the hair farm. Apparently it's a good idea, which I'm still working towards. But then I saw a video the other day of somebody said it was 12 inches of hair, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a lot of hair to me.
I don't think it has to be the stipulation. I mean, when I measured mine, when I cut mine off, it was in a plait. I don't think it was that long, and I'm sure that as long as it's probably more than 6 inches, I think.
I think the minimum is 6, because I think what they say is that through the process of making a wig, some of the hair can be damaged and some of the length of it can be lost, and it needs to look like it's a head of hair. You don't want, here I made you a skinhead wig. I don't think that quite works. So it needs to be like a head of hair sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, positive feedback from, like I say, at least 3 people have said. But I think yours and James Keep are the 2 that are up there that are talked about. I don't want to do anybody an injustice because there are some people's that haven't even been released yet. So
Yeah.
But the two that always jump out to people are yours and James Keats' first one.
And it's good to know that I can still create a little bit of interest somewhere.
Captivate an audience.
Indeed.
So how are you feeling being an internet sensation?
Well,
Fame and fortune is surely moments away at this point in time.
I know. I'm waiting for that moment. I'm waiting for the call.
That call's going to come.
Yeah.
Any day. So yeah.
But I'm a realist, so. But a hopeful one.
I used to say to people used to say I was a pessimist, and I was like, it's called realism. It's not being pessimist. You just, you're prepared to deal with how real things are. So yeah, this is number 2, podcast 2.
Well, I know I've already asked you because I tend to get a little bit sort of. Perhaps I just like to be a little bit prepared. So you said it's going to be on music, and I'm going to take this opportunity because I think a lot of your friends who you speak to are interested in music, and we're talking of captivating audiences. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do a plug.
Oh, a plug.
Yeah. If anybody is interested in progressive rock, there is
rock. I love a bit of progressive.
A band that tribute Hawkwind, Lemmy's first band, and they will be performing at the Fulford Arms on Thursday the 21st of June, summer solstice, complete with a Silver Cat dancer.
Ah, yes. I heard that the Silver Cat dancer was coming out of retirement or early retirement or stasis, one of those hiatus.
Yeah.
That's the one. Hiatus, where a band decides they don't want to be famous anymore and disappears off the face of the earth. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I spoke to somebody the other day and I was like, they were talking about a company that wanted, to give free products to do advertisement. And I was like, ooh, if they want to advertise on a podcast, let me know, because I might know one. So we talk about music, we talk about films and things like that. So I thought we could do some musical chat. I was trying to think, I was like, did I talk about this on the last one? Did I say this? Did I say that? So there's a potential to repeat various things. But you bought me a big bag of vinyl, which I was very happy about, and immediately started putting various different types of vinyl on the record player.
So of the vinyl that I did bring, what was the first one that you did decide to listen to?
The one I was most excited about and was like, I'll save it till last, and was like, no, I'm going to put it on first. It was Led Zeppelin 2.
Right.
That went straight on, and was very exciting to be like, I heard a lot about that album, that album as vinyl. Somebody had recommended, I think I'd sort of asked you and somebody else the same question of, if you're buying vinyl, what should you be looking for, what should you be getting? And that album had come up from the other person, and then you brought it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to this. That not only was it the first one I put on, not only was it the one I was most excited about, it's also the one I've played the most.
Right, lovely. I'm going to make a little bit of an admission here, because I think you were saying before, sometimes it's that sort of a fraudulence towards music, and sometimes I feel a little bit fraudulent, but I'll call it maybe a little bit of an obsession with music, is if it moves me, I will listen to it. And other than that, I don't know a great deal about what a musician should be doing, who a particular drummer is for a band or any of the lead guitars, rhythm guitars, bass guitars, whatever. But just listening to that music, if I know that I can move to it, then it's got me. So you can throw any questions at me, or just during conversation, and I'll soon sort of come across perhaps as not having as much knowledge maybe, but the interest in the music itself is always there and has been from a very young age.
I'm sure there was some point I'd heard something about music and the music that moves you, and it didn't necessarily need to be anything other than if it made you want to dance, i.e. that was the music that you liked and that was the music that you were passionate about, and if it made you want to dance no matter what time of day it was, no matter where you were, no matter what was happening, no matter what sort of mood you were in, then that was the true definition of music.
Yeah.
It should make you want to dance. A friend of mine always used to say that you should play music loud enough for it to sort of rattle your teeth, because music is supposed to be loud and you're supposed to feel it. And I always took that as like, you're supposed to like, oh, I really like this song, and his sort of take it is, no, you're supposed to feel it in your bones. It's supposed to be rattling the teeth out of your skull. You need to feel that song. And it was like, okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah.
And I suppose that can apply, but if you were listening to a ballad, then that is going to make you sort of move you in a different way, possibly. But yeah, I think there are certain musics out there that do need to be played loud. On number 11.
This one goes all the way to 11. Why don't you just make 10 louder? My car has one of the best features that, for me personally, I get in the car on a morning, I start the car, and as I'm pulling off the drive, I'm either putting the windscreen wipes on if it's raining, or cleaning the window, because I like a clean windscreen. It's one of my, even my back windscreen, that one has to be clean as well. Haven't cleaned the car in a year, but as long as the windscreens are clean, I'm fine. So I'm doing one of those jobs, and as I swing out off the drive and stop, it's a choice between whether I'm going to put the car in drive to set off or turn the stereo up. So I will inevitably turn the stereo up as I'm pulling out of the street. I'll probably get to the roundabout and I'll turn it up again. Then I'll get out onto the bypass and I'll turn it up again. And generally the volume goes up as the speed goes up. And then I get to work and I turn the car off and I get out. My car will reset the volume of the stereo. So when I get back in, it's gone back down. Because I sometimes think I'll get in and as I turn the ignition, I go, oh no, because I'll have had it like the windows rattling. And there are some, like you say, there's some music that you do just need it turned right up. And I find it more in the car. Like if I'm in the house and I'm like, music on, I just want to be able to hear it. I've started doing a thing on a Saturday morning. If I'm sort of like in the living room, I'll put music on in the kitchen so that I can hear it, but it's like a distance away. But that means I can still turn it up. It's that weird combination of I want to be able to hear it, but not too loud.
And I often find as well there are certain tracks that really take your attention, and you just want to share them with everybody else when you're in the car. And I have even been known to put my windows down and listen to this.
I am a true...
I know you don't want to, but listen to it anyway.
I am a true windows down, music up driver. Everybody should be listening to what I'm listening to. What I'm listening to is awesome. So yeah, I'm a true... Hey, you there. Yeah, listen to this. Even if you don't like it, I don't care. Yeah, definitely I'm a windows down. And I'll probably put all 4 windows down when it's just me in the car. Windows down. Especially in the summer, you know, when you can get the blowers on, all the windows down, music right up. Because it's summer, that's what summer's made for. Windows down, music up. So yeah, I listened to Led Zeppelin 2 first and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's such a mixture of feelings. Listening to it and being like, my God, this album is amazing. Immediately jump into... I wish I'd heard it originally and I wish I'd have been there. And then jumping back to... Because by that time you've got to another track and that track's amazing and you're just like, this is a great one and it sounds really good and that sort of stuff. And then the more you sort of get into that music, the more that you sort of listen to it, you start hearing the quote unquote stories. So the I don't know loads about it, but like the Page and Plant stuff, the fact that they hated each other, and it was like, really? And that's new to me, but I think it's a well-known sort of thing.
Again, and this is where I won't sort of admit to something that I don't know the full facts from, but going back to what you said, just listening to it and sort of wishing that you maybe had heard it when it first came out. I think for your sort of age group now, it's really interesting that it's gone sort of full circle.
Yeah.
And you got that opportunity of having listened to, I mean, Led Zeppelin probably were that early, not full progressive rock, but they were coming out of the rhythm and blues into a heavier rock sound, and just creating something very, very different. And it's just progressed all the way through to, I suppose, like your thrash now. But you can now go back and listen to that. Whereas for me, having come through that era and it's moved forward, I just have that, probably it's an age thing, that certain musics I just shake my head at. But you're seeing it full circle. And if anybody could see me now, they'd be seeing me doing that full circle with my hands.
John Rambo, full circle. Yeah, it's just... It's hard to put into words. It's hard to explain. Putting it on as vinyl. I was very much aware that I think in the space of about 2 weeks I had bored everyone to tears talking about vinyl. Because, like I said to you originally, it was like I was the first person to hear this song for the first time, and I wasn't. And I was like, yeah.
But I don't know, unlike a lot of people, I mean, a lot of the vinyl that's coming out now may have a crisper sound to it, I don't know, but I know that the albums that I've given you to listen to probably are of the era that it came out.
Yeah.
So you're going to get that real... The quality of the recording and everything is what it was back in...
I was saying to a mate of mine, we were having that, he was like, vinyl, you have to get up and flip it over and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I don't mind that. And he was like, oh yeah, it's all crackly and it's all this and that. And I was like, but if you're listening to something that was recorded at that time, if you listen to it on vinyl, you're listening to it how it was supposed to sound. If you're listening to that music on digital, it's been cleaned up, it's been changed, it's been modified, it's been made to sound better. But that's not necessarily the right way you're supposed to hear it. You're supposed to hear it as it was meant to be. Like I said, I can't quite put it into words, like listening to that music and putting it on and going, oh wow, this is amazing, oh wow, this is great, and then feeling sad and then feeling happy, and it's that the emotion that goes with the music, that roller coaster ride of listening to something and coming out the other end and being like, I feel like a changed man. I feel 1.2% different to before I put it on, and you can't quite explain it. You can't quite explain why, but something has changed. The other thing, and I've been running it through my head for a long time now, and I've had this conversation with somebody, and I'm not sure how to go about having this conversation. So one of the sort of heavier in that bag, there was a lot of Queen.
Yeah.
So it's only recently that I've come back round to listening to Queen. I was, and this is where I don't know how much I'm able to say about this. I grew up in a time where no matter how great a band Queen were, no matter how fantastic the music was, you weren't allowed to say that you liked Queen as a band. I grew up in that time.
Yeah, and I think that shall we use the word stigma?
Yeah, let's go with
possibly applied even during their massive popularity. There's a very divided line, and I think partly because of Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sort of expand particularly on that conversation, but there are a lot of people out there who don't have very open views. And some of his background and who he was, people would not, they couldn't accept perhaps that they were following a band of a...
Yeah. And this is why I say I really struggle to know how to have this conversation without lots of blanks and lots of... there was a part of me that was like, let's just have the conversation and get it out of the way. And then I might even cut it out if I decide that... And I just didn't know. The shortest version is I was at school in the 80s and school in the 90s. There was a particular word at that time that was more insulting. Before every other word was a swear word, you could say certain words and they were insulting. Words were acceptable in those days that you cannot say now in the street. You can't say stuff nowadays that people used as insults back then. And like you say, the stigma that went with Queen, no matter how good a band they were, there was this thing, and you couldn't say to anybody, I like Queen. I remember my sister was mad for when Bohemian Rhapsody came out, which I think must have been the second time.
Right, because I would say the first time was December 1975.
So this is the thing. It's my favourite quiz question ever, because I know the answer. So whenever it comes up, I just chuckle. So somebody will have ever been in a quiz say, which single is the only single to have ever been at number one twice? And I go, Bohemian Rhapsody, because it was the only single to ever reach number one twice. And it was 1970 and then 1991, I think. Don't quote me on that. She was mad for it.
And was the 91 one from the Wayne's World?
So it was the Wayne's World thing that kicked it off, but I think it was a Christmas number one. I think that was the other fact about it, or whatever you want to say. And this shows the age of it. She had Bohemian Rhapsody on a tape cassette single, and it was her pride and joy. And that was at the time when you could sort of say, I really like that song. And I enjoy it. And for me, being a film guy, I've said more recently, I'm not as into films as I used to be. Films were like a drug to me. I was like, I have to watch films. I have to know everything about it. I have to know all the lines. I have to quote all the lines. It was obsessive, and yeah, people didn't like it. But Queen did a lot of soundtracks. So Highlander, they did an entire Highlander soundtrack, Flash Gordon, various things like that. So again, that was a way that you could say, I like that song because it's from that film.
Right.
And looking back now, I more recently I've been listening to Queen and looking back going, wow, not being able to say, oh, these are a cool band, these are a great band, and because you'd be ridiculed for it.
It's one of those, you don't notice it until it suddenly becomes noticeable.
Yeah.
I go and, not so often now, but used to go and watch a lot of different bands that did rock covers. And I'm trying to think if any Queen songs were ever one of them. And I'm sure there must have been. But it is that you suddenly realise, is anybody singing Queen out there?
Yeah, it's... I don't know, like now, because now that it's not a thing. You can say the phrase, Queen are a great band, I like Queen, any of those things, and you'll find somebody who you're talking to will be like, oh yeah, great band, But so maybe there's a kind of... Does anybody think that they could do justice to Queen? Because there are certain bands out there that you just look at and go, that band could only have been done that way correctly because of those elements.
Yeah.
And I know that they've attempted to, quote unquote, replace Freddie at various different points, but you can't. It's just impossible. You physically can't do that. One of those things that I always used to say about Guns N' Roses, I disliked Axl Rose quite a lot because I knew a lot of the story behind Guns N' Roses and a lot of the issues they had and what issues had been caused by him and things that he'd done that were horrific to the members of that band. But if somebody said to me, could you imagine anyone else singing those songs, my answer would be no.
I went to see Queen after Freddie Mercury had died. Really wish that I'd seen them when he was alive, but it was with Paul Rodgers. Now, Paul Rodgers in his own right is an incredible singer.
Yeah.
But it's just reaching those pitches that Freddie Mercury could do. And it worked to a degree, but Paul Rodgers just couldn't. He could do some of the songs, but he couldn't out and do.
Because the one that stuck in my head was Paul Rodgers trying to replace Freddie, and I've seen videos, and it was like, he's giving it a good go, but no. Me and Leanne watched an anime, like a cartoon on Netflix that had been. I'd seen a trailer for it ages ago and fully intended to watch it. And then I turned up at Ed's house one night to do a podcast, and he was watching a show called Big Mouth, which is a comedy cartoon about adolescence done by adults. So it's a bit random. But they do a couple of pieces of music in that are very good. And one of them is supposedly the ghost of Freddie Mercury. And it's really well done. And I was like, they've done a really good job of this. It's really, really well done. One of the things they got right in that show is the music that they've done. So, yeah, getting to sort of listen to Queen. There's a live one, which is fantastic. I'd already, a while ago, downloaded because there's various different The Best of Queens. There was The Best of Queen, then there was Best of Queen 2, and then there's like this other one that, if you do it in CDs, it's like 4 CDs. And I was like, let's get that one. Let's get as much Queen as possible and put it on all over the CDs and stick it in the car. And I remember sort of saying to Leanne, I've got the Best of Queen, and she was like surprised and simultaneously not overly interested, and I was like, yeah, but you should give it a listen. And then I'm pretty sure I have lost those CDs to Leanne's car because I lent them to her and never got them back. And I can't say it strongly enough. Queen, what a band!
It's the versatility, I think, and probably before a lot of Madonna was renowned for doing it. They kept reinventing themselves.
Yeah.
So that, I suppose, I don't like to use popular music as a terminology. It sounds a bit strange, but that is probably why, for all that so many people out there didn't approve of them, they were massively popular for a long time.
A popular music quote, and you'll have to excuse my language, but somebody once said to Lars Ulrich, you've been described as pop music. And Lars Ulrich's answer was, pop music is popular music, and in case you haven't noticed, we're pretty fucking popular. And it was like, it's got a point. Yeah, I suppose they were the pop music of that time, and in that, but at the same time, pop music to me screams
people.
Whatever,
not M people.
Whatever the kids are listening to. We keep going to this quiz, and we keep doing the quiz, and I personally dread the music round because it's just like a piece of music comes on. It's like, don't know, and I say at the start of every one, I go, unless the answer is Metallica, I'm out on this one, I'm afraid. I don't know any of this music, so I'm stumped.
My music knowledge was quite broad, and I used to be very good at quizzes, but anything that is probably post about 1987, and you've lost me.
Yeah, the lad Sam's done a podcast, and he said he's going to come back and do a more music-based one. But he was like, if you want to ask me heavy metal 1975 to about 1991, we're on. Outside of that, don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I was once supposed to do a presentation for an English, as part of an English exam. I had to do a presentation, and they were like, "It can be on anything you want, but it has to be 20 minutes." And I already knew I was going to do a Metallica presentation, and was like, 20 minutes? And my tutor was like, "Oh, I know it's a while, but if you know," I was like, 20 minutes isn't long enough. She was like, an hour? The whole lesson? There, now we're talking. And I filled that lesson and did the whole thing, and was like, here's a long history of Metallica from 1981 to what will have then been about 1999. So even at that point, I was like, and there we go. But yeah, outside of that, my musical knowledge is very limited.
Going back to Queen and doing a comparison, I suppose, with Metallica, I don't actually know when it happened, but again, you had Freddie Mercury with the opera singer doing Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
And then other bands, Metallica being one of them, doing the San Francisco orchestra. And
Metallica played the Freddie tribute. And off the back of that, they took a Queen song, and I mean, by this point, I imagine there are people out there that probably believe that it's a Metallica song by now because they've done it so much. And I was going through the vinyl, I was like, somewhere on it there must be Stone Cold Crazy. And I think the second one I put on so far, and I was like, Stone Cold Crazy. But I remember me and my dad trawling record shops in Manchester for what seemed like an entire day because I was trying to find the Queen album that had the original Stone Cold Crazy on, and we didn't find it. And he was like, I know it's there. And I was like, all right, cool, but we never found it. And then, like I say, popped it on. It was on there. So yeah, it's that thing that to be able to say now, Queen, fantastic band. Almost feel like I'm trying to make up time, like trying to make up ground on the time that I wasn't allowed to say that. So now I'm just like, Queen, great band. And the people that I've spoken to, friend of mine, as I mentioned before, hugely into like black metal, death metal, doom and things like that. And I randomly said to him in passing, "Oh, Queen, what a band." And he span round, went over to his vinyl and pulled out Queen Greatest Hits Volume 2. And I was like, nice. And, it's that we're in that world now where we can say, great band. And it's a shame that there was a time that you couldn't say that. The other thing I was going to sort of say was we'd had a day out. And just that sort of memory of Dawn saying that Queen had been our like road trip theme tune, and that was kind of good. That sort of stuck with me. So there was some Kiss. There was quite a lot of Kiss in the bag.
And again, I've seen Kiss live. And I know that they have a huge following in America, the Kiss Army. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely sure that it is that there are certain types of rock that just don't quite hit the button for me. Mm-hmm. And I would put Kiss into that, and I know that if friends of mine were listening, musical friends, would probably say that's just ridiculous. But there are certain, I can't really sort of say particularly why. As a live show, to go and see them all dressed up and the stage effects and everything like that, fantastic. But certainly not something that I would ever choose to listen to.
Gene Simmons' tongue in person.
Yeah. And I mean, I think he did a programme more, when I say more recently, maybe within the last 10 years, where he was trying to encourage other people, sort of, I don't know whether it was like a talent type
So
show.
I heard a thing ages ago where Kiss were going to replace themselves and then manage the band, because they didn't want to be Kiss anymore. They wanted to go and do other stuff. So they were going to essentially replace themselves. They were going to have like a talent competition on TV, so replace themselves, and then they were going to be the managers of Kiss.
Right.
And then I don't think anything came of it. And then I think Gene Simmons was doing basically the Osbournes
Right, okay.
So it was, I don't know, the Simmons or something? I don't know. I think that was a thing for a while. But yeah, so I probably feel the same as you about Kiss. There are certain things that I go, that's Kiss. There's certain things that I'm like, I'm not running to, if they were on down the road right now, I'd probably wander down, but I'm not running down there sort of thing. But there are certain things that I know and certain things that I like. I always, if ever I hear the song Crazy Nights, I will always say the same phrase every single time. It's, Kiss, before the makeup. Because all I ever remember is the video of them performing that, and there's no makeup in sight, and it's just them, and they look weird. Because there's no makeup, and it's the 80s, and the hair's just like huge. And the only other thing is that sort of, that Gene Simmons thing where he went through a phase of trying to trademark everything. Words, he was trying to trademark words. And he sued somebody because he tried to trademark a word and they'd used the word, so he was suing them. And
is that a thing?
It's American, so yes.
And that's the thing with their music, and I apologise to anybody out there listening, it's just a personal view. There was a lot of music came out of America. I don't know, they have, again, going back to words, they have to sort of give everything a title, don't they? And so like the stadium bands don't really know what that might mean. But a lot of the music is just has a similar sound, but it doesn't have anything for me that thinks, that's really caught my attention. Yeah, because it sounds very much like
the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me with the Kiss stuff, there's nothing. There are certain songs that stand out as that's a great song, it's a great Kiss song, fantastic, brilliant. But yeah, I think I sort of come down exactly the same on that one.
Am I allowed to use the word mediocre?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Again, everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and I can't say that you're going shouting out to the Kiss Army and saying, come and get me. I think it's more of a, this is what I think of Kiss, and that's that. One of the other albums that's really stuck out of the stuff that I've been listening to is the one that can be seen from here, which is White Snake. And again, I've sort of said to a couple of people, because I talk to people online on a night, put the headset on, chat to people, talk about all sorts of nonsense and silly things. And sometimes I'll say, oh, what did you do last night? And I'll be like, I was doing this, doing that, doing the other, and listening to White Snake, and expecting that White Snake, and getting the opposite reaction. People are like, oh, nice. I'm talking on the internet. Oh, what are you listening to? Well, I'm just listening to a bit of White Snake. Nice. So that is not the reaction I expected to get, but the reaction of, oh, well done, bit of White Snake, nice. And it's like, yeah.
Well, White Snake, the influence of that was from Andy.
So that's huge, part of the story.
Yeah, absolutely huge White Snake fan, and sort of more current White Snake. David Coverdale had problems with his throat, so I think he lost.
Did he have nodes?
I think so. Yeah, but some of his earlier stuff is real like that. I don't know, like a softer rhythm and blues, rock blues sort of thing. And then after the faltering, I suppose, with his throat, he then started bringing... have you heard Still of the Night? Because that is a real high pitch, but he's not really catching the notes. And I think this was sort of the later stuff. But he's then... I think the last album I listened was maybe Starkers in Tokyo, it's called, and it's an acoustic album. Absolutely, his voice is incredible, and the guitarist with him is I can't say his name. I think he's got a Dutch sounding surname.
All right.
But yeah, the White Snake is...
I always imagine, doing the podcast, I always imagine at points like that there's somebody at the other end screaming the answer.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure there is.
Somebody's there right now going, it's this, but... So, two things. I'll do the one thing that's an aside, because otherwise I'll forget. Saying about like musicians that go through a thing where their craft is at stake because like they've blown their voice out or something. I heard recently that Huey Lewis has quit
The News?
singing.
Oh, really?
He's cancelled a tour, quit singing, and has revealed that he is deaf. He has a condition
Gosh.
that means essentially, to a certain degree, he's deaf, and he can't hear the music to be able to sing.
Oh, wow.
But then I'd seen a video the other day. I was watching a video that I've seen previously, but I enjoy it. It was, I think it was an anniversary of Back to the Future, and Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd went on Jimmy Fallon or something, and Huey Lewis was in the audience. And it reminded me that apparently he's cancelled a tour because he's had to retire, basically. And you just think how that must feel. I remember like James Hetfield blew his voice out on the Black album, and then a lot of people say that you can hear the change in his voice from that point on. I remember the lead singer of Disturbed doing the same. He blew his voice out at one point early on as well. I think it was after the first album, and you just think that that's their livelihood, that's their career, and
absolutely.
They have to then come back from that. And talking about like the voice coaches and things like that to get these people back, but they'll never all the way be back to and trying to move on from there. So that was an aside. Huey Lewis was a bit of random. The White Snake thing. On two separate occasions, Leanne's turned up in the doorway and gone, "What are you listening to?" So the first time, it was like, "What are you listening to?" I was like, "What do you think I'm listening to?" She's like, "Is this White Snake?" I was like, "Yes." And she then went, "Oh, this album always reminds me of Andy. And he would always listen to it all the time." And all right, okay. So the second time, she went, "What are you listening to?" I was like, "What do you think I'm listening to?" She was like, "This White Snake." I was like, "Yes." "Oh, this album always reminds me of..." So relayed the exact same story, and me being the person that I am, went, "Oh, such a good story, you had to tell it twice." She was like, "I told you that story before?" "Yeah, like 2 days ago." "Ah, okay." So apparently, I didn't know if you'd heard, but that White Snake album, which by the way is a slip of the tongue White Snake, reminds Leanne of Andy.
Yeah.
And he used to play it a lot, apparently.
He did. He used to play
I heard it somewhere.
a lot of White Snake.
I'm such a twat.
She would have only been maybe 13, 14, 15.
I'm not sure, but I think it had a big impact.
Yeah, it would appear so.
Oh, bless. So we're gonna move. We're gonna move into talking about.
Before we do, can I just put in a little aside?
Go on.
Now that you've mentioned Huey Lewis and the News, just a random musical fact.
Okay.
That I think probably within the space of about 18 months, maybe not that long, but there were 3 songs in the chart. No, there wasn't. Yes, there were 3 bands. Huey Lewis and the News, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and a woman. Somebody shout this answer at me, please, because I can't hear it at the moment. And they all brought out the same title of a song, but 3 very different songs. Power of Love.
Power of Love. Anytime that Huey Lewis and the News is mentioned, but especially if I'm anywhere in the vicinity of Leanne, I always have to go, Huey Lewis and the News, because that's my William Dafoe impression from American Psycho.
Right.
Because he just pulls out the CD from his briefcase and he's so happy and he's like, Huey Lewis and the News. That impression got worse as it went on. So yeah.
Is this? Do I have to? Was I supposed to have learnt another impression? Because I haven't.
Well, what we can do is we can turn this, because the current theme at the moment is podcast specials, which really helps because I'm starting to lose track of my numbers for numbering podcasts. So at some points I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a special, so we'll just not number that one. So we might just call this a podcast special, and then you can get round having not brought a new impression. Or we can just use the fact that I've done a fantastic impression
you have
of William Dafoe. So I was buying vinyl. I'd gone through various charity shops and bought some amazing vinyl. When you're paying £1.50 for vinyl, you're on a winner. Did I tell you about the day that I went to like a load of charity shops, walked out with like six records, was like, cool. Less than a tenner, then went to HMV and 40 quid later walked out with 2.
Yeah.
So, on one hand, loads of vinyl, great stuff, some classical music and all sorts of things like that. But then I walked out, in one hand I had the Baby Driver soundtrack on vinyl. In the other hand, I had Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And here's where things start to get a little sketchy. So, I listened to Dark Side of the Moon. So, the whole thing for me, Dark Side of the Moon, I remember in the 90s, the Dark Side of the Moon, Wizard of Oz craze.
I'm not sure.
You don't know this one?
I don't think I know this connection.
So, you put the Wizard of Oz in this day and age, let's say you put it in your Blu-ray player. You put Dark Side of the Moon, so you'd have to do it CD. Press play on Dark Side of the Moon CD, but pause it. On the third roar of the lion, the MGM line at the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, on the third roar, press play, so that the album starts playing at the beginning of the film. And apparently, I've never done it, but there was this huge craze, to the point that they used to sell the two things together. You could buy this double pack. The film and the album sync up.
What was the chances?
So somebody at some point, and I'm not saying for sure, but I imagine there might have been some substances, shall we say, recreational substance use that might have aided people in working this out. But yeah, apparently the two sync up perfectly. But I don't know much more than that because I've never done it.
I can't imagine that somebody would have just thought, oh, I'm going to put The Wizard of Oz on while I'm listening to Dark Side of the Moon.
No.
But you never know.
No. So I'm listening to Dark Side of the Moon, and this is where I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm a little bit of a fraud, because firstly, it's not original.
In what does that mean?
It was new vinyl. It wasn't original vinyl, so I'm already in a bit of a...
What? So is this one of the ones that you
so
said
I
you bought
walked
from
out
HMV?
Yeah.
Right, I see.
I took cellophane off it,
right,
sort of deal.
Yeah.
But
having said that, it's that, and I think we've probably had this conversation before. It's all about... You can't feel fraudulent listening to music because you're experimenting with what you want to listen to and what you're sort of trying to determine. Would I have liked this? Do I like this? Will I like this? And I just think the more you listen to, and because vinyl is all new to you now, there is so much choice out there. But you're trying to probably, and not trying, you're asking people's advice and they're putting suggestions to you. Dark Side of the Moon was a huge, huge album. I may have it somewhere at home, I'm not sure. I can have a look through these albums that I do have. But I don't think that there's anything fraudulent in sort of listening to these, whether they're new or not. I know we've already discussed you're going to get much more of a clarity on the sound when you put that album on than if it was an original album.
Yeah.
But it's all about the experimenting, I suppose, of listening, very much like the musicians did when creating their music. So why can't you then take that time to just take it on board and listen to it now and think...
I don't know. I think it's probably the part of me that's a purist when it comes to things. I'm just weird about stuff. And I know that, so I can accept it. I think I just need, this needs to go in this box and that needs to go in that box. And I need to, I watch my Japanese animation with subtitles on because that's how it should be done, in Japanese language with subtitles. And after, 22 years of watching animation, listening to all those Japanese words with the subtitles, I can safely say at this point in time, I still can't speak a single word of Japanese. I've talked to people who've learned entire languages. James Keep said he learned French from watching French TV.
Really?
And he's fluent in French. And it's really?
I watch a lot of the Scandinavian dramas and the Flemish ones in the hope that I might eventually speak the language. And I can say tak, which means yes in Norwegian, I believe.
It's a start. I mean, I know like some Japanese phrases, but I can't say I've learnt those. Somebody said to me, hey, this means this in Japanese, and that stuck with me. It's not me sitting there, watching these things going, But then, to be honest, there are points when those phrases do come up in Japanese animation, and I'm like, ooh, I know what that means. So the other thing I bought was the Baby Driver soundtrack, but I bought it on vinyl.
Right.
One of the weird things is when you open vinyl, when you buy it now, more often than not, a little card drops out. I don't know if I've got one kicking around. A little card drops out that says, go to this website and download a digital copy of this album.
It's the... I can't think of a word, but because obviously Baby Driver has come out very recently and all of the music that was used obviously would have been back from the 60s, 70s, which was all on vinyl, but it's just that because we're in a digital age, it just, all of those songs wouldn't have been on one, they might have been on a sort of mixed hits type thing. The now that's what we call music of the 70s, but... Yeah.
Now That's What I Call Music is about to reach 100.
Oh my gosh, I can remember the first one.
I saw in the shop, I think it's on 99. Yeah.
Goodness me.
I think I might, if I look hard enough, I might be able to find Now That's What I Call Music 14.
So would it have first come out in the very early 80s? Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember a time when, again, all I wanted was whichever one it was on cassette.
And I think maybe it was on about the second or third one, and my sister Dawn and I, it had been a birthday party. We lived in Stevenage, and all of the family had come down, and some of us were in tents and some of us were in the house, and Dawn and I were in a tent with some others, and we started to play this very silly game called Now That's What I Call. But we were, instead of saying now, we were trying to think of every rhyming word with now. And it just, you can't sort of replicate something like that. You had to be there. But it kept us awake for hours. And even now I'll put something in a message to Dawn and it sort of takes us back to that moment.
Yeah, so it's like the Baby Driver soundtrack will, like you're saying, so the music was from a particular time when vinyl, I can't sort it all out in my head. The music will have been from a time when vinyl was a thing. The soundtrack will have been created digitally. It's then been put onto vinyl, which I have then bought and received a free digital copy of it. I think my head at that point is close to either caving in or exploding. I'm not sure which. It can't make its mind up. And I think that was the point where I kind of went, I'm not sure what I'm doing anymore.
It becomes almost... When I said I can't think of a word, I feel like I want to say oxymoron. But that's sort of the opposite of what something is. But it is we're sort of trying to work with vinyl and digital, but...
Digital vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's essentially what that is. That's what I worked out. It's essentially digital vinyl. It's vinyl that's been created from digital music. I looked at... while I was in there, I was looking at an album that had just come out, which will be truly digital as it can be. And I was looking at it on vinyl and was like, oh, I don't know. Because to me, something like that, I would lean more towards wanting it digitally. So it's more accessible, so I can listen to it in the car, in the gym, in the whatever, rather than being tied to... Because to me, listening to vinyl is a bit of like an event. I was saying to somebody that I'll listen to it at certain times, but not other times. Like if I've got something going on, because to me, I need to absorb that music in the way it's supposed to be listened to and stuff like that. And like I say, it's an event.
And what is it?
The album, it was Machina's latest album, which, yeah, it was expensive, and I'm glad I didn't pay that money for it. And I'm glad I got a digital version of it instead. But that's a story for another day, because I'm thinking I might review that while pouring water all over myself. The other one, there's another one. Metallica have released Garage Days Revisited on vinyl, as if it was the 1986 version. Which I'd seen and tried to track down, and I was really annoyed because it was this thing that you could get it in America and pay very little for it, and then when I tried to get it in this country, everywhere was charging loads for it, and I was like, really? I was like, I'm not importing it from America. And then the next day went into a record shop and was like, oh, it's right here. And I was like, and that's the kind of money I'd pay for it, so I bought it there and then. But again, it's buying something now that's been produced now that would have been produced then, probably automatically on vinyl then. It's kind of cool though. It's orange vinyl.
I have got one album at home, but I didn't, I don't know sort of how. Again, it's just expanding your own personal music, but it's Live at the Marquee. Are you familiar with what the Marquee was? It was a big venue in London where a lot of the bands used to play. So it's like, it's not just one band, it's like
many.
Yeah,
collection of bands.
I can't. But some of these, I don't know. I think it's like Spencer Davis Group.
Oh yeah.
I think U2 probably performed there. So there's quite an extensive range of musicians that attended the Marquee, and I think it's closed down now. But it will just, I don't know. It's a little bit like the Baby Driver could have been if they'd have brought out an album of assorted tracks.
Speaking of places that aren't there anymore, I went to see one of the first live gigs I ever went to, barring going to see Elvis Costello and falling asleep and sleeping through the back end of it, because I was 8 and it was boring. And we were in the front row. And I was like, it's boring. I was like, now I look back and think, kind of probably should have shown a little bit more interest in that. But you know, I was young. And then I went to like a outdoor festival with a friend and his brother when I was down south. And that was like my live experience. And then the first thing I went to live was me and my mate Ollie and my mum, when me and Ollie were 13, went to see the Wild Arts at Leeds Town and Country Club, which isn't there anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And that was an event, let's say.
Would I have gone and seen Reef there?
Potentially. I mean, it was a regular venue for sort of a lot of bands played there and stuff, and then it closed in there. But it closed and moved, and it became Bradford Town and Country Club, and then it wasn't as good.
Right.
Although I've seen quite a few bands there. Oh, but yeah, I remember this being this huge event, like going to see this band, and it was a band that I really wanted to see. And we went, and me and Mum had an argument when we got there, and that ruined the whole thing. And I had to sort of watch the band whilst trying to enjoy it, knowing that, good times.
I think I'm trying to think when it was, maybe in about 1973 or 74, the very first bands that I ever went to go and see was in Munster, and it was Susie Quattro.
Nice.
And I think Mud.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, really, they were the peak bands to see.
Speaking of the Wild Hearts, that brings me to the other vinyl that I've been obsessing about recently. I think I've annoyed Leanne sufficiently by saying, I found this vinyl. Can you order me this vinyl? I'm not allowed on eBay, so if it's on eBay, I'm like, can you order this for me? Me and eBay don't get on. We're not friends, because they have stuff that I want. So there was this like getting vinyl and Wild Hearts vinyl, which this is a long story. So Wild Hearts vinyl now, you buy like singles, like 7 inches and stuff like that. And Leanne said to me, wouldn't it make more sense to just buy the album rather than buying all these singles? I was like, yeah, let's do that then. Okay, well, let's just get the album. Right, okay, so I saw one go the other day for £250. So let's get one of those, yeah? Obviously, I'll never be able to play it, because if I'm paying £250 for an album, I'll never put it on, because I'd be terrified. I'd have to put it in some kind of vault. I was like, although we could get the second album, because one of those went the other day for £160.
So what is it with the Wild Hearts that they're...
So the Wild Hearts
so collectible.
Back catalogue was deleted, and then it was re-released on a short run, but only on CD. The vinyl that exists is it. If you've got it, it's worth a lot of money. If you're trying to buy it, it's worth a lot of money. And the actual albums, those first 2 albums, are like Hen's Teeth and People Will. It's that thing that if somebody said to me, I've got Earth versus the Wild Hearts on vinyl, you can have it now for £250, there's that part of my brain that would go, have I got £250? Because it's like that. I mean, for me, there are certain bands, Metallica Till I Die sort of thing, for bands, like favourite bands, stuff like that. But over many, 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 many years, I've come to realise that the Wild Hearts is one of those bands that I'm just like, they are such a good band. Like you were saying about the feeling you get with music, I get that feeling listening to the Wild Hearts. That music will make me dance,
right? Will
make me sing, will make me happy. And some of it's really depressing. I've got a recent Wild Hearts album that I listened to a couple of times. I went, this album's shit. Never listened to it for months, and then went, something, I'm not sure I gave that album a real chance. And put it on. It's like 8 tracks, and each track's about 2 minutes long, and it's really fast sort of album. And then I realised that of the 8 tracks, 4 of them are about suicide, and then 2 of them are about like friends that have died and stuff. And it's like proper like, this is such a depressing album, but it's done in such a way that it's so upbeat, and you're just like, yay, everybody's dead. So yeah, there's a couple there, and there's some in the box, and
so To buy the singles then is...
So the singles aren't hugely expensive, £10 sort of thing, but you think that's like you're buying it for one song.
Yeah.
Even though some of them have got some of them have got 2 songs on, and it costs £10, and you only want one of the 2 anyway, and things like that. And I'll often, when I was saying that I put music on a Saturday morning, 9 times out of 10, I put Wild Arts on YouTube and listen to the discography or whatever, and or them live, stuff like that. And I was talking to G the other day, and I mentioned something about the Wild Arts. I'm toying with maybe having a Wild Arts tattoo. And he was like, "Oh, I was talking to him the other day." I'm sorry, talking to who? He was like, "Talking to Ginger." I was like, "Huh, what?" Then thinking back and going, "Oh yeah, because he's tattooed Ginger a while ago." And he was like, "Because I've tattooed him, you know." I was like, "Yep, there we go." He said he's moving to York. And I was like, huh? What?
And this is somebody out of the...
So this is the lead singer of the Wild Arts.
Wow.
And he's apparently either already moved, and like G bumped into him and was like, "Oh, you know, I'm your local tattooist, so come in." And then he'd seen him outside the shop one day, and he thought, was he coming in? And then he didn't come in and stuff. And I'm like, can I get him to come and do a podcast, do we suppose? I was saying to her, I was like, so I'm going to see if I can get Ginger to come and do a podcast. I don't know how at the moment, but, you know, he's living in New York and stuff. But then I realised that podcast would be, "You're Ginger. You're Ginger. Can you sign this?" And she was like, "What will it be, your ball sack?" And I was like, possibly.
Did Leanne say that?
No. She's funny sometimes. So yeah, if you see any Wild Arts, like a lad I work with, he's just come back after being in Japan for 3 weeks. And I think it was on the last couple of days he was there. I was like, the Wild Arts were massive in Japan. And I was like, I must text him and ask him to look in a record shop. And then I didn't get a chance, and he came back. I was like, "Did you go to any record shops while you were there?" He was like, "I only saw one." I was like, "Oh, okay," because you know the Wild Arts were big in Japan. And then Paul was in
That's
Newcastle.
a song. Big in Japan.
Yeah. Paul was in Newcastle because they're from Newcastle, the Wild Arts. Paul was in Newcastle at the weekend, and I got this picture sent to me. He was like, "Does this mean anything to you?" And it was a Wild Arts logo, and I was like, "Where is that?" He's like, "It's a sticker in a toilet I'm in right now." I was like, "Brilliant." I think somebody was like, "Oh, I imagine Ginger will have put it there himself." I was like, they are from Newcastle, the Toon. So that's our music section done and dusted. I was gonna talk about a couple of other things. It's Mental Health Awareness Week.
Okay.
Just as a complete change of subject. Big fat U-turn. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. The 14th? Is that
Of May?
14th of May for a week. And I don't... Did I mention it to you that I'd seen there was a Mental Health Awareness Day a little while ago?
I'm not sure.
And they put all these posters up at work. And it was like, "Oh, Mental Health Awareness Day tomorrow." And I was like, "Ooh, mental health awareness. Okay, cool, that sounds good. I wonder what they're going to do for it. Are they going to do, like get people together and talk about mental health?" And there's posters everywhere. I think every toilet door had it on, and the doors through to the toilets had it on, and then every pillar down the middle of the office had a poster. And I was like, they're really doing a lot as far as the Mental Health Awareness Week's going, days going. I was like, oh, I wonder what they're going to do. And then it came and went, and
Nobody did anything.
And I was like, that's a bit of a missed opportunity. Why advertise something like that and then not do anything?
And it's one of those things again, isn't it, that has sadly stigma attached to it.
And that's my issue.
Yeah, and I think we all
That's my issue.
have something that we're having to deal with that can impact us on our own mental health.
So Leanne's done like a website as part of the company, we have the opportunity to use our homepage to be able to create websites inside of it, and you can do whatever you want. And she's done one for Mental Health Awareness Week, and I think she's done a quiz and stuff. And she was talking, not necessarily giving me all the answers so I can win the quiz at any point in time, but she was talking through the quiz and some of the statistics about mental health and the number of people who in their lifetime will suffer with mental health and how difficult it is for those people to talk about mental health and all of these things. And it's like, yeah, so why aren't we doing something about it? Why aren't we, because I was revved up, and fair enough, now I'm like, well, I should have done something. I should have gone to speak to someone and say, hey, let's do a support group for mental health, or let's do a charity something, or raise money, or do something. There is too much of a stigma around mental health. People feel like they can't talk about it. They can't say, I'm struggling with this, that, or the other. But how is that helping anybody? I know that there was some adverts at some point about men, because men are the worst for it. They don't talk about mental health. And there were adverts about pulling your mates up, and I don't know if there was some slogan about lifting your mates up and stuff. And that was great, but it was just an advert on TV that ran for a little while. And
I think we're viewed in a particular way if we go around and excuse me a minute. And trying to lift people all the time, not physically, but it's like, I know people at work think maybe I'm slightly odd because I am a bit super positive. And I'm not like that every minute of every day.
How awful is that?
To think that
you're the odd one because you're positive.
I know. And to be honest, I try not to let it bother me.
Awful.
But it's you can go into work, can't you? And sometimes you don't want to ask the question, how are you today? Because you don't want to be brought down maybe to a level. So when I go into work, I always sort of, I don't know, even if I'm just putting not a front, I won't say I'm pretending to be something that I'm not. But I try not to get caught up in conversations that I feel might bring me down. But is that then me not being very supportive of somebody that perhaps is struggling that day? But it's such a... Because... and I don't care admitting to anybody that I would go and see a counsellor at any time if I felt that things were getting on top of me, because I always think that if I can keep my head right, the rest of my body will follow. Yeah. And I've suffered recently with some physical problems, which I put down to stress. And then these stress factors manifest, and all of a sudden you feel like you're drowning and there's nothing to sort of, you can't keep your head above the water. And so for me to go and talk to somebody, a complete stranger who knows nothing about you, can't make any judgments about what you're discussing, is the best way I find to get things sort of out in the open. But again, you're not actually getting them out in the open because probably you're not talking about things with
the relevant the relevant people.
But it is something that I don't think people should be afraid to deal with. And even if it's not a case of going to a counsellor, and certainly I don't want to sound like I'm being blasé about mental health either, but if it's something that hasn't escalated, then there are other therapies out there that will help.
Yeah.
And it's just always trying to get it's not possible to be a positive person however many, every minute of every day, because we've got to have bad times in our life. And I might sound a bit condescending, but if you don't have the bad times, how can you ever appreciate the good times?
You can't enjoy the good times, yeah. I'd seen something, and somebody sort of said at one point in time, it's like, you can only enjoy the good things in life because you've experienced the bad side of it.
Yeah.
And if our lives were good all the time, we'd have no comparison.
No, absolutely.
So we'd actually end up being miserable because we're just like, oh, well, this is great. And then it's like, oh, it's still the same. And, it's just great. And then eventually you'd become blasé about it, and you only appreciate the good stuff in life because you know how bad life can be. I was talking to James. I met James in town on Saturday, and I was in town on a Saturday. I'm not making any excuses. I knew exactly what I was doing, but every shop I walked out and I was behind the slowest person in town. And as I said, when I met up with James, I was like, oh my God, everybody's so slow. I was like, but there was a time in my life where I would have been screaming in my head, oh my God, get out of the way. Why are you doing? Why are you taking so much time? You're just taking forever. Just move. Just go that way so I can go that way. And then we don't have to be in this situation and I can just get on with my day and you can carry me in slow. And now I go, oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And just take the opportunity to walk down the street a little slower for a change. I turned to come home this evening and realised I'd come out of the gym a little bit sooner than I normally would, which meant going the way that I was coming home was probably too soon, and I hit a load of traffic. And that instant, and then it's like, I'll get there eventually. Nobody's going to die if I don't get... I used to say to people, oh, and did anybody die? Well, no. They look at you like you've got two heads. Well, no, nobody died. So it probably wasn't all that bad then.
No.
No.
And just on a sort of loop of everything that we've already discussed prior and where we started from at the very beginning of this conversation, if I am ever sort of thinking, not quite sure how I feel today, put a record on and I will dance in the kitchen. Sometimes Ozzy will dance with me. Sometimes he's not inclined to, but I'm more than happy to dance on my own in the kitchen to some uplifting music. And
at this point in time, we should probably acknowledge that Ozzy is the dog. It's not. Sometimes Ozzy comes round and we have a dance and then he's like, Sharon, and then leaves. No, it's the dog.
The Osmeister.
Yeah. The Osmosis Jones. The one thing I will say about mental health stuff, and this is probably me putting a little bit of something out there, is I listen to, as I've mentioned on almost every podcast I've done, I listen to a lot of Hollywood Babylon, and there was a point where they started doing this sort of like thing where they were saying, if you need to speak to somebody, you need to speak to someone, make sure you do. And what I know from experience is the hardest thing you can say to another person is, I'm not doing too well. I'm not coping so well. I'm struggling a little bit. But that can be the difference between a good day and a bad day. And because you expect that other person's going to go, I don't care.
Yeah,
in a roundabout way. Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Anyway, I'll catch you later.
And
it couldn't be the difference between a good day and a bad day, and we shouldn't fear that phrase.
Absolutely. Because I think, again, and it's that when you don't feel so bright, you want to sort of withdraw and remove yourself from other people's companies. This is just me, because I would feel like I wouldn't want to inflict how I'm feeling on other people. But then when people sort of try and cheer you up and get you out and you're in company, you suddenly think, this is what I needed. And so, to be on your own and struggling is something that you really need to think there's always somebody out there that is going to listen, and don't ever be afraid to get in touch with that person, whomever it may be.
Yeah. Because
nobody is going to turn round and say, well, can you call me back tomorrow morning when I'm back home or whatever. Then people, if they're there and you're talking to them, have that conversation with them right there and then.
Some of the nicest things I've heard people say recently is just the phrase, "If you need anything, or just if you need to talk, give me a shout. I'm always at the end of the phone."
Yeah.
One of the things, Paul Williams, he sort of took the time to actually say, "If you need anything, give me a shout. I'm at the end of the phone line." And things like that can make a massive difference to your day. And I think that's all I wanted to say as far as Mental Health Awareness Week is concerned. I might do a Mental Health Awareness Week podcast at some point, maybe in that week. The two might go together somehow. Talking, kind of linked loosely, mental health. I have been trying loads of new things. I'm drinking green tea.
Okay. I'm drinking ginger and lemon.
Just throwing that out there. Green tea, ginger and lemon.
Is it making you feel any?
Not in
it's
the
very
slightest.
good, apparently, for cleansing.
That might explain something. Anyway, I no idea. Absolutely no idea whether what it's supposed to be doing it is doing. I read a book that I cannot pronounce the name of. I think it's Ikiagi. Voice is going.
Oh,
the Japanese.
Yes,
the Japanese book. People, I cannot recommend this book enough. The blurb for it said that you will actively rewire your brain just by reading the book, and I was sold at that point in time. And it's about I think it's Ikiagi, The Secret to a Long and Happy Life. I'm not overly. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this book and then live to 100. I'm not overly sure that's possible for me.
Isn't that Mr. Miyagi?
Yeah. But The Happy Life sounded great. And it talks about mental health. It talks about green tea, small amounts of exercise, reducing the stress in your life. It talks about all sorts of psychology. Basically, it centres around this island that has the highest concentration of old people in the world. And then the studies that they did on the people that live in this island and why it is that they are old and how is it that they make it so far in life. And it was a great book. I cannot recommend that book enough. So that was that. In there was a lot of stuff about green tea. So me being very impressionable, went out and bought a load of green tea and started drinking green tea. Can't say I've noticed any different in my life. There was stuff that says that we live in a constant state of fear. And these Japanese people don't. They just live this tranquil life, and that was the reason. And talking about text message, a text message puts us into a state of fear.
Are you going to get a response? Have you written the right words?
Your phone vibrates or makes a noise, or you get an email and you go, because your initial response is danger, Will Robinson, and that's that, and this constant state of fear. And mobile phones are, for want of a better way of putting it, mobile phones are killing us. Little bit, steadily killing us all day, every day. And it's terrifying. And there's all sorts of stuff. I had this great conversation with James Keep on his first podcast, and this conversation about society, and this conversation about how we are in this world where we just sit down, put Netflix on, spend 45 minutes looking for something to watch, and then go, oh, sod it, we'll watch this. That's an hour that you could have done something else.
Yeah,
and he was talking about spending time with his girlfriend and how they would have nights where they wouldn't put the TV on. And initially I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting, to say the least. And because the TV wasn't on, they'd actually have a conversation. And he said you look forward to things more if you're not just watching any old whatever. You go, I want to watch this, because you're excited and you want to watch it and you look forward to it. And the realisation that the number of times that I've sat down and gone, right, Netflix, what have you got for me? And, you know, I've eaten a meal and I've eaten whatever and I've had a drink and I've done something else and I've been on my phone for 45 minutes and then gone, I didn't actually find anything to watch on Netflix in the end. It's wasted time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've now moved into this, me and Leanne have basically moved into this sort of phase now where we don't as much put the TV on, we don't as much put Netflix on. We will sit and we have conversations and talk about various things, talk about the day, blah, blah, blah. So the green tea was one thing.
What is the green tea made of?
Green tea
leaves? I just wondered.
I got two different ones. I got jasmine was supposed to be the best or the closest because it's the one that's not as diluted. I don't know. And then I got one that was green tea and lemon. The jasmine one I couldn't drink. In the end, I was putting blackcurrant in, like blackcurrant cordial, just to take the edge off. I can drink the one with lemon. So I'm having 2 cups a day. I've noticed no difference. I don't feel like I'm living any longer at this point in time. But it's supposed to be good for weight loss. It's supposed to be good for, you know, anytime you put the word antioxidant with anything, apparently that's a good thing. You know, antioxidants, good.
Fight carcinogenics.
Gluten, bad.
Yes.
That's all I know about the world at the moment. The other thing that I'm quite interested, I really want to get into, and a friend of mine would say, you say you want to get into it, but you haven't done it. So I want to start doing a bit of Tai Chi.
I know an instructor.
Really?
Yes.
Will they come to my work and do it at 9 o'clock in the morning? Because I want to get people at work to go. We have this room called the Agora. Take from that what you will. And it's just a space and it's got seats and they're talking about changing it all and making it a bit nicer to sit in and stuff like that. But it's this big space. And I want people...
Is there light coming into it or is it artificial?
It's got a full wall of windows and it's got lights. So I want people to get to work at a particular time and then at 9 o'clock go into the Agora, do Tai Chi, do 5 or 10 minutes and then go back to work and do the day's work. Because apparently it's supposed to be a really good start to your day.
Well, there's a move. I can't... Because I did Tai Chi for about 6 or 7 weeks. And the lad that teaches it, it's just at the Fulford Village Hall. And that was on a Tuesday night. But one of the opening sequences is where you just stood upright, sort of arms elevated, and you sort of come down into a squat position, sort of, but bringing your arms down and sweeping back up again. Mm-hmm. And it's... I can't think what the word is that I'm looking for, but it just... You're sort of opening everything up and you're flowing like water flows. You're not just bending down in a rigid state.
Like water.
Yeah. So everything is done in a very flowing movement and it just creates the energy in your body just to start moving. So yeah.
So the book I read, what could be Ikigai, until somebody tells me different, had loads of stuff about Tai Chi. And it had, towards the back, it was all of the moves in pictures and stuff. It's a form of
martial art.
It is a form of martial art, and then there was various different ones developed from that point on that were more focused on. And it's supposed to focus on, like, cleansing your body in a way, getting you... It's supposed to set you up for the day. It's supposed to make you feel better. And in a world where companies are bringing mindfulness in and headspace and meditation and things like that, where companies are doing it, Tai Chi is supposed to be a combination of all those things. Now, I've recently got back in to meditating, and I did a session at work on the mindfulness, which is like meditating on the go. Put those two things together, can sort of calm your mind, which is a big thing at the moment for me. The Tai Chi, all these sorts of things, green tea. Essentially, I'm going to be immortal before long.
Tai Chi and chai tea.
Yeah, chai latte and Tai Chi. And, so, I want to get into doing a bit of Tai Chi. I want to do it on a morning, set myself up for the day. And like I say, as a mate of mine would say, if you want to do it, then why haven't you done it? So maybe I should just go and do it. But, something I have done in the last week, I am a very large man, but I'm a very large man who has done a yoga session. That was interesting. Well, I'm quite big, so for me it's difficult to do certain things. I can't sit on the floor, and I certainly can't cross my legs.
Where were you doing the yoga?
At work.
Right, okay.
Lunchtime yoga session. I will be doing it again tomorrow. Whether I can cross my legs or not, I will still be in that room doing yoga. And for me, any yoga session is a hot yoga session because I get warm fast. And the people that do these things don't understand the concept of maybe turn the aircon down a touch, just a notch, just a little bit. But the best thing about the yoga was they put a YouTube video on, and the woman doing the YouTube video was crazy. She was mental, like batshit crazy. It was brilliant. So we're all trying to do these moves whilst all simultaneously laughing and like rolling around on the floor doing the moves, but also laughing and like falling over laughing and stuff because you're already halfway there. And there was a point where there was a move where you're on your all fours and you put your arm out in front of you and then you thread the needle, which is putting your arm under your other arm, and you've got to put your head on the floor. And I was like, so I just got to collapse on the floor at this point because I'm in a lot of pain here, and eventually just realised that I was like, I'm just going to... And then we had 5 minutes lying on the floor at the end. And
you had a twister mat on the floor, didn't you?
I should have done. The best thing was I'd had a really late night on the Tuesday, then a really late night on the Wednesday, and this was Thursday lunchtime. I'm lying on the floor like, yeah, this is what I need right now. Lying on the floor in the middle of the day, having had 2 really late nights.
So you're doing it again tomorrow? I'm
going to do it tomorrow.
And have you practiced any of those moves?
No, okay. Not at all. So there's this theory that as a man, I think, but that sounds a little... I don't know if that's a bit sexist. Or I don't know if it works on the principle that women will have already done it, but I'm going to say it as a man, when you reach 40, what you're supposed to add into your health regime, training regime, workout regime is you're supposed to do at least 1 session of yoga a week to keep yourself limber, keep all your joints and your bones and your muscles all. And I was saying to somebody that I know, CrossFitters, they will do on a Sunday yoga. Sunday is their yoga day. So yeah, bit of yoga.
Good.
Yep, we'll see how that goes. Don't think I'm going to get any more limber.
Well, it's all about perseverance, isn't it? But you've taken a step towards doing something.
Bit of yoga.
Yeah.
One thing I've always been proud of is no matter how big I got, I could always touch my toes. And I know loads of people that can't do that. And I've always been able to touch my toes. From a standing, bent over, touch your toes.
Not just bringing your toe up to your hand.
No. I can touch my toes. Which I think I was always surprised because people would be like, no, you can't. It's like, yes, I can. Here, let me show you.
Yeah.
Touch my toes. So, maybe I was made for yoga. Maybe yoga could be the thing.
Just sort of touching, I suppose, on the mental health things and people sort of like mindfulness. Last week at work, it's not so much for our age group, but when people are in hospital, the elderly, and they're in there for sort of periods of time, and they're left in their pyjamas. They did a thing at work last week where people came in to work wearing their pyjamas to encourage what it might feel like when you're in hospital and you're having to sort of wear them all the time. Because once you reach the age of maybe 75, 80, and you're hospitalised for a period of time and you're not taken out of your pyjamas, each day that you are in your pyjamas adds 10 years. Well, it takes 10 years of your life away. So if you were 80 and you were going to live to 90, you might only live.
Wow.
Sure. So they were trying to encourage people.
What is the theory there?
If people are well enough, it's to get them out of their pyjamas. But if you're going to work in your pyjamas, it makes you feel a little bit more
subdued,
sloth-like. Yeah. Maybe you don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
So they were just trying to encourage people to support the get them out of their pyjamas, sort of. And that's obviously not everybody, but where applicable, if people are reasonably mobile and can get out of their beds, then get them out of their pyjamas and keep them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm drawn to stuff like anything like that. Any sort of improvement. I can't say when it happened, but I was all about improvement. And I would say to people, I always want to be able to go to bed saying that I'm better than I was the day before.
Yeah.
And I was always prepared to accept failure on every single day, because I believed that if you have the mindset of, I'm going to get out of bed today, I'm going to bed better than I did yesterday, but you fail, the intention was there. So you started the day with the intention to be better by the time you went to bed. And I never wanted to be controlled by anything. I never wanted to be sort of, I can't do without this or I can't do without that. If I ever felt that was a thing, I'd run in the opposite direction.
And that's going back to the fear, isn't it? Because we've got so much to lose. And each day we're getting that little bit older, so there's that fear there. But it's all of the superficial stuff around us that could be taken from us at any moment, whereas going back to your book and the people on the island, if they haven't got all of those things in their ears or bothering them, then...
One of the things it said that I found quite interesting was that they are taught to always have an additional thing. So if you've got a job, have a hobby that, if need be, you could make money for it.
Well, I have one of them.
So you do a job, you go to an office every day, but it said nearly all of these people had a vegetable garden. So a lot of them, the retired ones, would get up. None of them, that was the other thing, none of them consider themselves retired. They just don't go to work at that job anymore.
Right, okay.
And it talked about the guy, he was the head of Studio Ghibli, and he just drew. All he did with his life was draw. And he drew and drew and drew, and they made films, and they released these films, and quite popular, quite famous, all this. And he just sat, there'd be production meetings, and he would just sit in the corner drawing. And then he announced his retirement. And he left work that day. Here's my last day. See you guys later. Bye-bye. Left. Next day, came into work, walked in, sat down at his desk and carried on drawing. And the people were a bit like, okay, what's the deal here? But they didn't really want to say anything. And then somebody had asked him in an interview, and he was like, all I know what to do or how to do is to draw. Just because I'm not working here anymore, just because I'm not getting paid to do the job, doesn't mean I'm going to stop drawing. That's what I do. That's me. That's who I am. So I draw. So I come here. There's pens and pencils and stuff. And then he continued working.
A bit like that man in the office.
Yeah.
That film.
And these people would work on the principle that if you lose your job, for some people, it's the end of the world. Mm. It is truly the end of the world. These people are taught and learn, and their mindset is, if I lose my job, but I've got something that can feed me, that I could potentially sell to get money, or I can do something else that will make money, it's not the end of the world. And there, with sort of podcasting, there is people sort of initially it's like, oh, where's the money? Where's the money? Why are you doing this? Why, what are you gaining from it? Where's the money aspect to it? And you're taught from everything you read about podcasting early on, don't ever expect to make any money from it. You can, it's out there, if you do, once 100,000 people are listening to your podcast on a weekly basis, you might make a couple of quid, but don't go into it to make money. But I look at it as my interest in my hobby and stuff that takes up a large amount of time, and I've got this time to fill and to do it. I kind of feel that it fits in like that. This is my vegetable garden.
Yeah, and it's keeping you away from Netflix.
Yeah.
And you're having a conversation.
Yeah. And
with varying different people.
Yeah, the podcast family is quite large now, which is cool, which is interesting, and the interest from those people is still there. And today, I meant to get the person's name, and if I start clicking around on the laptop, you'll be able to hear it. But today I had my first comment on a podcast that wasn't somebody I know. Nobody I know has commented, but somebody I don't know has commented on the podcast, and I was terrified to read it, and I read it, and it was positive, and I was like,
good.
Oh my word. Somebody has taken the time to comment on what I've done, and they've been positive about it. And it's almost like they've opened this conversation because they've started saying what they thought about what we talked about. It was the film review one, and they've gone, oh, this is what I think about that film, and this is how I felt about it. And their opening line was, I like what you're doing, stick with it. And it's like, those are the things. My favourite thing each week now is my phone sends a notification saying, Cookiecast has released a new podcast, and I get that as a notification on my phone, and I run round showing everybody, look, it still makes me chuckle. And yeah, people said, somebody said a nice thing, and yeah, this is my vegetable garden.
Well, it's encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know I probably would have just been sat at home watching the telly.
Watching Netflix.
I don't have Netflix. I download all of these Scandinavian or European subtitled dramas.
Cool. There you go. So that's that. That's everything I had on my list.
Right.
There you go.
And it's that thing again. I have this apprehension thinking, oh my gosh, what if I don't know what to say?
I have the apprehension as well. I'm like, right, I'll type out a list. So I'll type. Right, there's my list. And then my fear is that even though that list is like a page of A4, what if I said to the other person, oh, what do you think about this? And they go, oh, yeah, it's great. Okay, so that's that question answered. So next question, and like I keep saying to people, I'm trying to move away from the question and answer format and closer to the conversation format. So we'll see what comes of that.
Okay, so my plan, and I'm not getting very far with it at all, is to learn Italian. I would love to learn Italian.
Italian?
Yeah. So what I may do next time, when I get invited to do one of these, is to learn a little bit of Italian and speak to you in Italian.
Oh, now you see, you've said it now. That is now committed to history.
Yeah.
So now you literally have to do it. James keeps saying he's going to do a podcast in French.
Right. I didn't actually say that I would do it in Italian. I said I may talk a little bit of Italian.
Well, it's a done deal now.
On a Bananarama note, Robert De Niro is waiting. He's talking Italian.
There we go. Right, well, thank you very much for coming yet again.
And thank you for having me.
Do come back again and we can talk more music, and I'll tell you if I manage to get my Tai Chi session going.
Yeah. Well, I can speak to the guy that I know and find out. I
spoke to the wellbeing people at work, and basically they said, get a quote for somebody to come in and teach it, and the wellbeing people will requisition the money to pay for it. So
brilliant. Yeah.
Wellbeing's a big thing right now. So
Yeah.
and there's money available. So yeah, do and see if they can do a quote to come in and do like a week's worth of sessions or something.
Right.
9 o'clock, half an hour or something like that.
Yeah, will do. Brilliant.
Cool.
Thank
Right,
you.
well, thank you very much for coming.
Okay.
And that's the end of the podcast. So until next time, bye-bye.
Good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Brilliant. Bye. So what did you think to that? Isn't Donna great? I love sitting down and chatting with Donna about stuff. I always feel that we really do get a great conversation going. The last one we did got great feedback, and I was excited to get Donna back on. Hopefully we'll be able to get her back and do some more podcasts, more specials, talk about the fine music and things like that. As always, I'll encourage you to go to the website. It's cookiecast.com. There you can get the links to our Facebook and Twitter and email and all stuff like that. Give us a shout. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you're liking. Tell us what you're not liking. What you want to see more of. What you want to see less of. But until then, bye-bye.